Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Lauren Izo. Coming up in this edition. As Israel commemorates 6 million lives lost in the Holocaust, the UAE and Bahrain mark the day as well, for the first time since the Abraham Accords. The U.S. is back in touch with the Palestinians with a new funding package, but what about a phone call? And Olim demand their families be allowed in the country, and now they just might be. That is the sound of Israelis all over the country observing a minute of silence this morning, honoring the 6 million Jews that perished in the Holocaust. Every year on this day, a siren sounds at 10 a.m. local and the country comes to a standstill to show respect for the legacy of those we lost. The Prime Minister and the President were among the attendees of the official state memorial ceremony taking place last night at Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum. As the country takes a pause from its political turmoil to commemorate the victims of the Holocaust, the Prime Minister vowed to fight against and prevent those who seek to destroy.
Israeli officials stood outside Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum to mark 1 minute of silence, along with the rest of the country, commemorating the victims of the Holocaust. The president also released a special message on social media about keeping the memory of the Holocaust alive.
We must renew our commitment to work together to preserve the memory of the Holocaust, fight anti-Semitism, and ensure that our shared promise of never again become a shared reality.
Meanwhile, Israel held its official state ceremony for Yom HaShoah on Wednesday at Yad Vashem Museum in Jerusalem. The Prime Minister spoke out against returning to the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran, as talks with world powers about reviving the deal are set to begin this week.
הסכם עם איראן שיסלול את דרכה לנשק גרעיני, נשק שמאיים עלינו בהשמדה, הסכם כזה לא יחייב אותנו כהוא זה. יש רק דבר אחד שיחייב אותנו, למנוע ממי שחותר להשמידנו, לבצע את זממו.
Israel's Holocaust Survivors' Rights Authority said in a report published earlier this year that 17,000 Holocaust survivors died in Israel, including 900 who died of COVID-19. 53,000 survivors have been infected, and the report also states that nearly 140,000 Holocaust survivors live in Israel still today. While optimistic about the future, the President of Israel knows the work has just begun.
There are many reasons to be optimistic, but there is still much to be done.
Chana Rifkin, ILTV.
Over the years, the memory of the Holocaust has been kept alive by its witnesses, the survivors. As long as they're with us, we are able to understand the pain and the suffering through the eyes of those who were there. But of course, with time, legacies fade. The only way to hold on to those legacies is to listen to the testimonies of those who saw it with their own eyes.
כשהכניסו אותנו לגטו ורשה, אני הייתי בת 6. עם הזמן לא היה מה לאכול, ובחוץ שכבו אנשים שהיו כמו שלדים. את זה ראיתי מהחלום. הוריי וגם דודי קיבלו תעודה ועבדו בבית חרושת. הגרמנים הודיעו שהם פותחים גן לילדי העובדים, וכל הילדים יקבלו 2 ארוחות, חלב, בשר, כל מה שצריך. אנשים השתכנעו ושלחו את הילדים לגן. יום אחד הכניסו אותנו לגינה ושמו אותנו בשורה, והופיעו פתאום אנשים, והתחילו לראות במכונת ירייה. ושכבתי בין הילדים המתים, מאוד פחדתי, ונהיה לילה, וקמתי והלכתי הביתה.
Helena Friedman is a survivor of the Holocaust and had the honor of lighting a torch at Yad Vashem's opening ceremony to Yom HaShoah this year. Roe Friedman is her grandson and recently discharged from his compulsory IDF service as a Special Forces Combat Commander. Helena and Roe, thank you so much for being with me today. It's really an honor.
Thank you for you. It's an honor for us.
So, Helena, we just watched a clip of you talking about being in the Warsaw Ghetto, where you lived at the age of just 6 years old. Now, what is your response to those who deny things like this actually happened during the Holocaust or deny the Holocaust as a whole?
אני אומר בעברית?
כן.
כן. אני ממש, זה מעבר להבנה שלי, מעבר להבנה אנושית, להבין איך אפשר להתכחש לשואה. זה היה דבר כל כך גדול ואכזרי, 6 מיליונים נספו. אני גם רוצה להוסיף שבעצם בשלב מסוים העולם ידע, לפחות חלקית, מה קורה. ואני לא מבינה איך אפשר להתכחש ולהחביא כזה דבר שהוא כל כך גדול, כל כך אכזרי. זהו.
So my grandma feels that it is disgrace that there are people that deny what happened during the Holocaust. 6 million of Jews were murdered in Europe, in Poland, Germany, and so forth. She mentions that during the Holocaust, some countries knew what happened, just like America. They knew that the Holocaust happened, and now today, in the modern time, it's very frustrating that people deny what happened. When we have photos, we have videos, and more important, we have living people that, just say in interviews and Yad Vashem, what happened? They still live and they say the story.
זה עדיין לא היסטוריה.
It's not history yet. There are people that say what happened over there.
Roe, as a third generation from Holocaust survivors, knowing what your grandmother went through during the Holocaust, what is your response to this? How do these types of stories resonate with you?
Right. So, as a third generation, it's an honor for me to be the last generation that actually face and personally talk with the survivors. We are the last generation that can do it. And I think that is a great responsibility for us to carry on the legacy and the stories of these survivors. In the next generation, the people that will face with the Holocaust will just hear the testimonies, the photos, and the videos, and they won't be able to talk personally with the survivors. And our mission, our job as a third generation, the last generation to actually talk with those survivors, is to perpetuate the stories and legacy. It's great honor, but great responsibility. Yeah, my grandma said that we need to perpetuate it as a Jewish ethos.
Now, Helena, you were chosen this year as one of the torchlighters at the Yad Vashem opening ceremony for Yom HaShoah. How does that make you feel, when you were walking up to the podium carrying that flame? What was going through your mind to have, such an honor and such a big responsibility?
הצרמוניה, האירוע היה מאוד מרגש בשבילי. עצם הנוכחות של הנשיא וראש הממשלה, שרים ורבנים וכל הקהל, והרגשתי שבעצם שומרים בזה את האתוס של העם היהודי. וכמובן, אם לא נשמור על הזכות שלנו לזכור ולקיים את הזיכרון, אז הוא יאבד, וזה הכוח שלנו.
So my grandma said that yesterday was a really excitement event for her. After a long period that my father tried to give her the honor to be part of the Yad Vashem event, she finally made it with the presence of the Prime Minister, Prime Minister, the President, rabbis, and a lot of important figures that came to honor her and the other 5 survivors. She said that a nation that doesn't remember her story and background doesn't have the right to live in the presence. So she says that it's very important to us as a Jewish community, Jewish country, to remember what happened. And the event of yesterday was a very important event to make sure that everybody will remember what happened during the Holocaust.
And I want to give a kiss to my beloved grandson.
You guys are really a very inspiring duo. Thank you very much for being with me today. It's such an honor to have you on the show. All the best.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, for the first time since the signing of the Abraham Accords, in addition to in Israel, Holocaust remembrance ceremonies were carried out in the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. Bahrain marked Holocaust Memorial Day in a virtual ceremony initiated by the House of 10 Commandments. They also lit candles, part of what is called the Yellow Candle Project, the global communal effort to remember Holocaust victims. Dubai also lit yellow candles to remember those who were murdered in the Shoah as part of commemorations in the United Arab Emirates. The country even invited a special delegation of Israeli artists and musicians to take part in the event. One of those performers was Ido Dunkner, an Israeli-American musician who was part of that delegation in the United Arab Emirates. Now let's go live to Ido, who joins us all the way from Dubai. Thank you, Ido, for being with us.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing? You know, I have to ask you, what was it like being a part of the first Holocaust Remembrance Day ceremony in the UAE? It must have been a very historic event.
Honestly, I was almost in tears. It was a historical moment that I'm truly honored to have had a part in and to participate and just witness the history being made over there. It was very, very, very exciting to be a part of it and just to see the entire thing also with our cousins, you know, with our new friends here in Dubai.
Sure. So what was the highlight of this whole experience for you? And what was the most surprising experience you had there?
Oh, wow. I think the highlight, was the ceremony yesterday, because so we came here a few days ago and we got to meet incredible people that are here from Dubai or from Abu Dhabi, or, you know, from like Arabs that are basically, you know, are like us. And we got to interact with them a lot. And we went to another historic museum that just opened the first time for the Holocaust, and seeing the change happening in Dubai with us being here and with them having us and being so friendly and so nice, I think is the most incredible thing. And I think I can't put my finger on a specific highlight. I think we had a lot of different things that we did that were truly exciting, and we had like a Jeep a desert tour, which was really, really, really cool. So maybe that would be considered as a cool highlight.
All right, and just to put things in context, tell me a little bit about how you got to Dubai. Who sent you there? Who's participating in this event? And why are you there in the first place?
So there's an organization called Israelis that have created this entire thing. They started talking about it a few months ago with taking some influencers from Israel, including musicians or comedians or just social influencers and connect them with influencers in Dubai. And the whole purpose is to have peace among us and to have friendship among us, that is way more than the government's peace, you know? So that's the reason that we did it. And I think we kind of, all of us didn't know what to expect. But as soon as we got here and we got to meet like the people and we got to experience talking with everybody and hearing their stories and their background, I think we really became close, and we were going out to bars, and we were, you know, we were doing lots of fun stuff together, and I think that's the reason we all came.
All right, Ido, thank you so much for joining me, and please have a very safe flight back to Israel.
Thank you so much for having me.
And in other news, U.S. State Department is renewing aid to the Palestinians after Donald Trump cut it completely during his presidency. During a press conference, U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price saying that the move is absolutely consistent with U.S. law.
It aligns with the values and the interests of the United States, as well as those of our allies and partners. The United States is committed to advancing prosperity, security, and freedom for both Israelis and Palestinians in tangible ways in the immediate term, which is important in its own right, of course, but also as a means to advance towards a negotiated two-state solution.
The Biden administration will reportedly provide around $235 million in U.S. aid to the Palestinians, marking the president's biggest rollback of Trump's Middle East policy since taking over. Could Biden be trying to repair American ties with the Palestinians? Let's find out from Kevin Ratlin, U.S. Director from the Alliance for Middle East Peace. He joins us live all the way from Virginia. Thank you for being with me today, sir.
Happy to be here.
So relations between the U.S. and the Palestinians were extremely damaged during Trump's term. We know that Palestinian President Abbas last week rejected a call from Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Now, do you think this new funding perhaps could reopen that dialogue that was damaged during the Trump presidency?
I think it can't be we can't understate how much damage was done during the last 4 years between the relationship between the Palestinians and the United States. The maximum pressure campaign that the Trump administration put forward really did in so much intense damage that it's going to be very hard to come back from that. I think that, you know, this administration has already taken a lot of time to reopen that relationship, reopen that dialogue, and begin having those conversations. But I think there is going to be some trust building that needs to happen from the United States side to kind of repair that relationship with the Palestinians. I see this aid, you know, the new release of aid that happened yesterday, as well as the administration's pushing forward on the Middle East Partnership Peace Act, as steps to kind of regain the trust of the larger Palestinian population.
So what are the details of the funding, and how does it compare to what was given, you know, pre-Trump during the Obama era, for example?
So I think, you know, this aid is one, we have to remember that this is fiscal year $28. So this is was passed during the Trump administration, actually, and it's hard earmark money, meaning that this is money that has to be spent by the United States government, something that the Trump administration refused to do time and time again as it relates to foreign assistance to the West Bank and Gaza. They did release $5 million in aid for COVID relief early last year, but outside of that, there wasn't much of a release. But in terms of the actual dollars that are going out for this aid, it's $75 million in economic and development assistance to the West Bank and Gaza, $10 million for peace building programs via CMM at USAID, and $150 million in humanitarian assistance for UNRWA. So this is a dramatic increase in the amount of money that has gone to the region for this specific stuff over the last 3 to 4 years. And that, I think, is really remarkable, because it is not only a resumption of aid, but it's all compliant within current U.S. law, which is really important to remember.
Right, and Kevin, you know, we still don't know much about Biden's intentions in general with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. What do you imagine his next moves might be?
So I think what we've all kind of assumed and what we're seeing play out in real time is a very slow and steady drumbeat to kind of re-engage in this conflict in a nonpartisan fashion as much as they can be. It includes, you know, having conversations with Mahmoud Abbas and with others in the Palestinian Authority. It's including seeing what happens with the Israeli election, but more importantly, it's finding new levers to kind of make an impact on this conflict while understanding that there are a lot of other issues throughout the region that need to be addressed, be it Iran, Syria, etc. And so by kind of taking a slow and steady burn approach, as it relates to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to kind of repair the damage that has been done over the last several years is really important. I think personally, the fact that this administration is going to be implementing this new peace fund vis-a-vis USAID and the Development Finance Corporation is part of that effort to kind of reestablish into a slow burn to get back into dialogue, into ending this conflict. I do think, though, one of the things I will point out is that earlier this week, they reiterated their stance on two-state solution, which is really important as it relates to where this administration kind of will be going forward from here.
Interesting. All right, Kevin Ratlin, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, imagine having the most important day of your life and not being able to have your mom and dad there. That has been the plight of thousands of Olim, or new immigrants, in Israel, as their non-citizen relatives have been barred from entering the country for nearly a year. Even those getting married or giving birth have not been allowed to have even immediate family members get permission to enter the country. Well, a group of Olim gathered to protest the restrictions this week in Jerusalem, holding signs and some even wearing wedding dresses. They came out to demand the government let them see their loved ones. That same day, a few hours before the planned demonstration, the government announced new, more relaxed guidelines. Former member of Knesset Dov Lippman was at the forefront of that movement and filed this report for us about who exactly is allowed in from now on.
After months of lobbying, the Israeli government has changed the policies, and they are now allowing relatives to come be reunited with their first-degree relatives. The number one policy change is that vaccinated relatives are allowed to come and visit any first-degree relatives in Israel, which is a major change. We're so thankful to the government and to Aliyah Minister Peninnah Tamanu-Shata, who helped in this change. There are also rules that allow for coming for the sake of a wedding, even if someone's not vaccinated, visiting lone soldiers, visiting people who are doing national service, and we're very thankful for this change. There's a long way to go because a lot of these changes require a lot of bureaucracy and documentation, including apostilles on birth certificates. So we do have a lot of changes we want to make, and the ultimate goal, though, is certainly to reach a point where anyone who's vaccinated from anywhere around the world, for any reason, can come into Israel without having to show these relationships or all of this documentation. We still do require quarantine. We have serological tests for people to get out of quarantine if they've been vaccinated or if they've recovered from COVID. So all of those things are in place, but we're continuing the process of looking for more changes and opening things up even more so that Israel can be a place which is much more accessible for people from all around the world.
Thank you for that, Mr. Lippman. Now let's take a look at the weather forecast with Hannah Rifkin.
Partly cloudy skies tonight and tomorrow, with lows this evening in the 50s or ranging from 10 to 16 degrees Celsius. And tomorrow's highs getting into the 70s or the 20s in Celsius. Now into Saturday, rainfall expected with temperatures, depending on where you are in the country, in the 50s up north, 60s in the center, and 70s in the southern region.
Thank you, Hannah. And now, just before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel.
Playing tonight on Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's a very, very somber day in Israel. He came in wearing black tonight, and on his sneakers he has written the word Yizkor, which is remember in Hebrew.
So I think that video speaks for itself. That is Israel's favorite NBA basketball player, Deni Avdija, playing a game last night with Yizkor, will remember, written on his shoes in honor of Holocaust Remembrance Day. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.29 shekels to the American dollar and 2.6 shekels to the Canadian dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to visit the all-new and improved ILTV website at iltv.tv and subscribe to our newsletter for the latest updates while you're there. I'm Lauren Izo. Thanks for watching.